Hi, I'm James Howell, and this is an old Commodore 64 game called Out on a Limb, based on a Jack and the Beanstalk backstory. It was developed in 1984 by Sam Manthorpe and published in 1985 by Analog Software. Analog developed a lot of off-brand versions of popular video games in the 1980s like Frogger and Donkey Kong. Copyrights were not as carefully policed at that time, at least with the European C64 programming scene, which was the software region I was exposed to as a kid. As a consequence of that, we, in this game, have a player character that's clearly derived from Mario, circa Donkey Kong and Mario Brothers. Now, I like Out on a Limb because however much its ideas derive from game trends popular in its time, it requires close attention to timing and a pixel-perfect performance. And I mean that literally. It would benefit from revision, but it fits into the tough but fair spirit of older games. It's a platformer adventure game with a good and bad ending, depending upon how much of the game you complete, and I really think it has a lot to offer to modern sensibilities if it weren't for the outdated design ideas that make it somewhat inaccessible to a modern audience. So here's a long play of the game. I recommend C64 Forever for quick and easy emulation of Commodore 64 games. It goes through the process of coordinating the virtual hardware, and it also loads everything with that nostalgic Lodestar, 8, 1 command line. It's great. Out on a Limb has various parts where it uses voice synth software, which is actually really cool for its time. Not many games took advantage of that, the most notable one being Impossible Mission by Epyx, so it's really neat to see the technique appear here. As you see in these screens, the game pace is pretty slow. The game's native speed is welcome when playing to time your jumps, but that doesn't translate well for a modern watching audience, so we're going to speed this up, and I'll slow down when something needs pointing out. About the clouds and moving platforms, your character doesn't, move with them. When you hop onto them, you actually have to run in the direction that they're moving. And they actually move at different speeds than you run, so that actually requires you to time your jumps in a very specific way to make sure that you can keep pace with them as you're going along. Also, one of the things that's kind of funny about the design is that the tops of the screens don't actually map to what the bottoms of the next screens look like. It's one of those older design things where you have to go look and see and memorize to make progress. Well, a lot of modern games do that too. It's one of the appeals of the Souls games, but anyway, less common now. These next few screens are some of the sections that really kind of call my attention to how precisely this game needs to be played, and one of the things that made me like it quite a lot. These will show you how literally pixel-perfect performance is required. I was initially annoyed enough to dismiss the game as just unplayable, but then after a few screens I realized that there actually are solutions, and it appears actually to have been designed to demand that much of the player, which I respect. Given the age of the game, it felt kind of like going back and reading an old favorite childhood book, like Winnie the Pooh, and then finding out that it had, several other more mature things going on there that you just didn't pick up on at the time. And now I can appreciate what's going on here. Like, sometimes it's a bad idea to actively jump forward onto the platform ahead of you because there's not enough room, you'll run into an enemy, like here. So what you need to do is actually just keep jumping up and down, because sometimes you can pierce the bottom of the platform above you and get up that way, so you can get just that toe on there, because otherwise you're going to run just on the edge of the enemy. And, as a pretty reliable rule of thumb for assessing anything challenging, if it's consistent, I think of it as guiding intelligence, as opposed to being a happy accident at one point in a larger work, which, credit certainly should go to the author for that, or in this case, designer. It testifies more to the creator's potential than it does necessarily to a comprehensive grasp of craft, or deliberate action. This brings us to the first of 3 Jack and the Beanstalk treasures, a golden egg, which actually there is a great voice synth clip here. Let's give that a listen. I really like how you can tell the accent in the voice synth there. I think that's really cool. Here I'm showing you exactly how fussy this jump is in terms of the pixel perfect. It has to be exact. On the point of the voice synth. I mean, obviously, if it were American, it would be an American accent, but that's like water to a fish for me, right? I love other Englishes. And it's really cool to see them represented in something, older like this. It's really neat. When you run out of lives, you have to start at the very beginning, and that's a really harsh barrier to entry, given how challenging the gameplay is itself. I've used emulator save states at the start of each room, but the process of playing through each room is legit. In fact, I think that if this game were to be revised, it would really benefit from checkpoints. Not too close together to keep it tough, but, I guess to acknowledge to the player that they have run one leg of a harsh race. This is part of the game that I think could use improvement. If you run against the wall here, clearly it's an obstacle, but at the bottom you can actually pass through that, and you have to do that to advance in the game. I think that could be clearer. I was actually stuck here for days and thought I wasn't going to finish the project because I couldn't figure that out. The game stumbles a bit here in the next section. It becomes, at turns, a bit easier and also brokenly hard. There's the screen with the mouse, the garden screen, which you'll see in a bit, that are just largely wasted space. There's no real challenge, and they're simply there to either pass you through or give you a decoration. And it really falls out of step with the tightness of the rest of the design. There's also a game-breaking part here, where you get stuck between two screens and die instantly, and that's bad. But fortunately, is just a one-off mistake. If you try to pass through that game-breaking space, which you can, in fact, you'll miss one of the 3 treasures. So I think it's designed to encourage you away from there, but that's really, really bad encouragement since that forces you to start all over where a simple wall would have done. Oh, there's another cool little voice clip coming up here. Let's give that a listen. As you can hear, the sound effects are not exactly on the same level of sophistication as the voice synth. It's really interesting to me that they decided to drop on something that's fairly exotic like that, but at the same time, there's only one jump sound effect, and it is entirely in terms of raising and lowering pitch. The game actually reviewed pretty poorly. In part because of the sound effects, they found them quite grating, which I can testify they are not that great to listen to on a regular basis. And here's another voice clip. That seems less well-proofed. Overall, it's weaker atmosphere, but fine given that there's enough interesting stuff here. Though that interesting stuff is kind of dropping off in these level designs. It's becoming much less interesting and much less demanding, and it's really more about reading where you're supposed to go in a level and just getting there with a couple of hops. The enemies are just changing sprites, really. They're the same action. They have the same actions as the hats before. Along with the change of pace, it alters things with this Rapunzel section so that it's less diagonal, less back and forth across the level, and more just straight up vertical. It returns to that solid design here in a very strange way. You do have the precise jumps here with this cloud and this cricket or whatever, but at the bottom, you have to wait for the goose and the man to line up just right, which means you have to hop straight up and down to avoid the man long enough for them to line up, and I'll show you exactly how precise that jump needs to be and how easily you can screw it up if you don't get both their location and the timing of it right. It started out as frustrating, but I kind of realized that frustration was having been spoiled based on the relative ease of the previous areas, and that is in fact a trap. Nothing will entice somebody more to go into a trap than to label it trap, and, well, why don't I just find out? Anyway, I came to like this quite a bit more once I got into the puzzle. It forced me again to ask the same question that I asked at the start. Well, is this bad design and something I should give up on? But no, there actually is a solution there. The answer is just to wait out and jump precisely. And we're actually running into the same thing here. You need to get into this second cubby after the first lightning bolt, and then jump straight up and down until the second instance of 2 lightning bolts crossing the center pit at the same time. And then you can just dash straight to the end. Again, it's a waiting game, it's a watching game, and there is an actual solution there. It's not random. It is unfair, though, that you have to go all the way back to the start if you don't figure out that pattern on the first try, which is an unrealistic burden, I think. And this is really close to the end. I think that at this point, the singing harp should be yelling to the giant to wake up, but... Oh, here's another voice thing. I think that is a cool little fanfare to put right at the credits. Though, a little unfortunate that the lead programmer's name is misspelled at the top. This is where your level of exploration and completion influences the ending you get. I'm going to go back to an old save here where I only got the egg and not the harp. That leaves us with only 2 treasures at the end. You can only fall to your death in front of the credits screen as you submit an offering of your blood at the feet of your unchosen gods. Truly a punishment befitting the hubris of daring to climb a beanstalk and steal the treasure of the giants in the sky. And I think if the gods have a single message, it's go big or go home. If you came for the stuff, get all of it. And here's the good ending. And whatever the hell this means is anybody's guess. I become Lord of Frogs, and amphibianity becomes me. And that's Out on a Limb. Commodore64, 1985 analog software developed by Sam Manthorpe. My overall takeaway is that for its good spots, it is definitely worth attention. Good job, Sam Manthorpe and the crew of Unchosen Gods. Thank you for watching.